Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Our politicians, whatever color, creed, country they may be, whatever their political ambitions and political affiliations may be, have one thing in common with media. Both are unprincipled, both are in the habit of making mountains out of molehills. Both are capable and interested in creating scary conditions where none exist. Both are capable of exciting public to the point of almost insanity and suspension of capability, thinking, or applying one's mind. This they do to ensure their hold on the minds and the brains of the people, to make them think the way they want, to manipulate them by suppressing certain facts and, as I said, exaggerating minor details. Nowadays, we are being bombarded every day by media and by the politicians, whether the Prime Minister or Foreign Minister, that we are in a trade war. And wherever I go, whosoever calls me, asks me, Dr. Lamba, has America initiated a trade war? Is it true that the world is engaged in a trade war? And that's the end of the globalization and the trade all over the world? Yes, I agree. The president of USA has imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum. And these tariffs are from Canada, Mexico, and European Union. But we are not in the midst of a trade war. It is a trade scuffle. Yes, definitely it's a trade scuffle. But it's not a trade war, not as yet. It might escalate into a trade war if the politicians and the media have their way. So you would naturally be asking, how come that's not a trade war when he has declared that there'll be increase in tariffs and the governments all over, whether it's Mexico or Canada or European Union, have said that they will reciprocate. Canadian Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister very clearly said there will be dollar to dollar retaliation. Well, that's, as I said, more of an action taking to excite people, to mislead them. And that's why the Prime Minister today said that he'll wait for 30 days. Now, there are three reasons why I do not call it a trade war. The first, that President Trump believes his statements about his negotiating capabilities, and he often opens negotiations with a threat to commit mayhem, noise. He shows us he's going to break all crockery and to shatter all previously poorly negotiated agreements he has inherited from his predecessors. This show of his superiority to his predecessors might be his necessity, political necessity, but it's there. He is confirmed in his views that earlier agreements and the earlier experience of US was poorly negotiated. Imagine, he threatened to nuke North Korea, persuaded Kim that it might be a good idea to sit down and negotiate. His threat to raise tariffs and take other steps against China trade persuaded President Xi to give a favor of $375 billion and also promised to open financial markets and lower tariffs on the imported cars. Surely, there are reasons. These proven examples show that what is sauce for his enemies is sauce for his allies. If he could be successful in persuading a dictator like Kim to sit down on talks and eat a humble pie, if he could make Emperor Z come down to table and offer carrot when we saw the stick, surely Canada, European Union and Mexico would also one day, sooner rather than later, understand the reality of the situation and come down, and the things will go as placidly as they were earlier. You see, the allies, by allies I mean Canada and European Union, they view their trade relations with USA as a power of a broader alliance. And they're offended by mechanism Trump has chosen to deal with his enemies as he's doing with themselves. But the Trump administration was well aware that it would be unlikely to push through tariffs through Congress. Now, in USA, to levy, increase or decrease tariffs and duties is the responsibility of Congress, not of the president. Congress has the authority to lay and collect taxes, duties, imports, and exercises. And Republicans who believe that free trade is the route to prosperity would not have let Trump have a free hand. So, intelligent that he is, he resorted to a statute that has never been used before. There is a law also that the president can issue an executive order increasing tariffs or removing tariffs if the imports constitute a threat to the national security. So, he said, okay, there's a threat to national security, so I'm increasing the tariff. The definition of the threat is enough to allow the administration's lawyers to conjure a national security program in support of tariffs. And when Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that the idea that Canada poses a threat to US national security is laughable, there is some truth in that. There is no denying that there is some truth in that. But then that was an excuse that Trump took because Congress would not have agreed. And since it's an excuse, you can be sure it's not going to be going through for a longer period. The only purpose is to take the first step, make them come to their senses and realize that free trade has also got to be fair trade. So that was the first reason. That's not a trade war. The second reason that it cannot be called a war is the minor effect it has on the economy of USA and or trading partners. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross pointed that the effect of Trump tariff paid by the Americans would be trivial. For example, it shall be 1 cent on a can of one beer. Now, 1 cent going up or 1 cent going down doesn't cause an earthquake. It is not the volcano eruption of Hawaii. Let's be very clear about that. And the retaliatory tariffs that Canada, European Union can impose would have no effect on an 18 trillion economy. The whole thing goes into billions, okay? And the US economy is 18 trillion. Even if you add $1 million more of taxes, the effect is inconsequential. And then you don't forget, Canada's retaliation has been compiled to exert pain politically, not economically. 95% of the world's bourbon is made in Pennsylvania, the hometown of Hershey's chocolates, which are common in Canada. Well, if the people don't take chocolate, or they take the local chocolate, or they take any other chocolate, it's not going to impact much. But there'll be one factor, that politically, the Republicans would have to face those factory owners. So economically, it's not affecting. Politically, it might. So war affects in the sector for its fought. If it's an economic war, it should affect economically. If it's a military war, it should affect from the military point of view. And in case it's a war for political reasons, it should affect politically. So it's not a trade war. At the most, you can call it a, as I said earlier, a skirmish. Now comes the third reason. Trade war has to be consistent. And let's be very clear, the president's negotiation style, if people have seen in the last 1 year, is to give a few concessions. He declares something. We'll do this. And then these people go running to the White House, the opponents, like President Xi came, like Kim came. And then he gives a bit of a concession. The people against whom the tariffs were increased say now the tariffs are increased by 3%. And he says, okay, I'll reduce by 0.5%. So they can go home to their electorate and say, look, we got 0.5% relief. And he goes and tells his supporter, look, we got 2.5% increase. So both sides, politically, it's a win-win situation. And when it's a win-win situation, how is it a war? As I said earlier, it's a skirmish for the mutual benefit. And many times it's a contrived benefit. So Wilbur Ross very clearly hinted when he told the reporters that Trump's refusal to accept and extend the tariff is a part of continuing discussion. NAFTA negotiations were not proceeding at the speed which he wanted. So he has burnt a fuse underneath the liberal leaders of Canada and of Mexico, make them jump up, and they'll be in a hurry to accept NAFTA in its modified form. And the moment NAFTA is accepted, these tariffs would go back. So where's the war? It is a pressure tactic being used. Now, secondly, this very week at the end, Trump is coming to Canada. He has to attend G7 meeting to be held in Quebec. And his principal economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, is a free thinker. He's a free trader. Quite possible at this time, the president, in a show of magnanimity, might say, okay, I'll lower the tariff on cars. 25% I have said I'll raise. I will not put 25%. I'll put 20% or 17.5%. Then he would be able to tell these people at his face. Now it's only through the media. When he's face to face with G7 people, he'll tell them how that is wrong. Now look at the World Trade Organization average. The average tariff in USA, weighted average, is 2.4%. That is the total average of all the tariffs of the imported things in USA. Compared to that, European Union is 3%. Canada is 3.1%. Mexico is 4.5%. China is 4.4%. So all these countries against whom tariff is being levied have a higher tariff. So he's bringing it at par. And when you bring a thing at par, do you call it a war or do you call it a level playing field? So why call it a war? Now, another thing, anomaly, which he's going to talk about, that Germany, if they import cars from USA, they pay 2.5% duty. But if the Americans import cars from Germany, they pay 10% duty. Why? Sorry, when Americans export, they pay 10%. But when the Germans export, they pay 2.5%. Why this disparity? So, level playing field cannot be called a war. At the most, it can be said to be evening out. And let's not again forget, he talked of the cars, but let's not forget that autos go back and forth on the Canadian-US border. They are built part in Canada, part in USA, part in Mexico. Then semi-built cars are shipped or trucked to the other country where they get some other parts like sensors and things like that. They come back to that country for finishing and then again go back. So what time would you include it to be an export item? So it will export, re-export, and then again export. So it is absolutely not unreasonable. I fully agree with Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan. He said it's absolutely a legitimate complaint. And even the World Trade Organization has said, let the tariffs be equal. What's wrong with that? So it's not unreasonable. And last week, WTO had a meeting. And they said, let's get the act together. And we have to clarify that the tariffs at present are the wrong way to go about. Now, what is the game plan of Trump? The game plan of Trump is to base his November campaign for the Republican congressional candidates and also for his re-election agenda of 2020 on the growth of USA, which are being threatened by this unlevel playing field of tariffs. So, he is playing the game, jump up, withdraw, but not withdraw absolutely, and at the same time ensure that the superiority of US is not harmed in any way. Let's not forget, this is a minor irritant he has introduced in the relation. He is going to have important matter with China, a nation with which a trade war might be well worth, because the American industry of the future, the American industry of the future is not cars, it's not chocolates, it's not maple syrup, which Canada is hurting. It is artificial intelligence rather than metal bars. So he is concentrating on those ideas, on those products which are temporarily exciting, but in reality have no significance whatsoever. And he is only lighting a fuse underneath these political leaders, most of them not being able to see the reality of the picture. Calling this action a trade war is a mistaken notion and only shows the incapacity to understand the real facts. Trump is really the master of the deal and is doing so. Thank you.